The morning I watched Patricia Morrison's Lexus get buried under 3 feet of snow during the blizzard of January 2026, I couldn't help but feel a small sense of poetic justice. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, back when this whole mess kicked off in my quiet neighborhood in Burlington, Vermont. I'm Wesley Randolph, and I've been living in the Maple Ridge Estates community for about 5 years now. It's one of those cookie-cutter suburban developments where every house looks vaguely similar. The lawns are expected to be pristine, and the homeowners association has more power than they probably should. I work from home as a software engineer, which means I've got flexibility that most of my neighbors don't have. That flexibility became crucially important when winter hit hard this year. Vermont winters are no joke. We're talking serious snow, the kind that doesn't just dust your driveway but buries it completely. Most folks in my neighborhood either pay for professional snow removal or they're out there at the crack of dawn with their little snow blowers, trying to clear enough space to get their cars out. Me. I invested in a serious piece of equipment 2 years ago, a heavy-duty plow attachment for my truck. Best decision I ever made, honestly. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in early January. We'd gotten hit with about 8 inches of snow overnight, and I was up at 5 in the morning, coffee in hand, ready to clear out my driveway before the morning rush. My driveway is pretty long, maybe 60 feet from the garage to the street, and it connects to my neighbor's driveway at the bottom. That neighbor is old Mr. Chen, a retired postal worker who's got arthritis in both knees. For the past 2 winters, I've been clearing his driveway too, just being neighborly. Takes me an extra 10 minutes, and it means he doesn't have to struggle with a shovel. I fired up my truck at around 5:15. The plow attachment makes some noise, I'll admit that. It's not quiet, but it's also not any louder than your average snow blower, and honestly, if you're inside your house with the windows closed, you can barely hear it. I was making my first pass down my driveway when I saw the lights flip on in Patricia Morrison's house. Patricia lives directly across the street from me. She's 47, works some middle management position at a pharmaceutical company about 30 miles away in South Burlington, and she's been the head of our HOA board for 3 years. She's got that specific haircut. You know the one, kind of an asymmetrical bob that screams, "I want to speak to the manager." She drives that white Lexus SUV with the custom license plate that says "Boss Lady," and she treats the HOA rules like they're the 10 Commandments handed down from on high. I didn't think much of her lights coming on. People wake up early. I continued my work, clearing my driveway in neat passes, then moving over to Mr. Chen's property. The snow was that perfect consistency, not too wet, not too dry, and my plow was handling it beautifully. I was just finishing up Mr. Chen's driveway, probably around 5:45, when Patricia came storming out of her house. She was wearing this bright pink bathrobe over what looked like pajamas, and she had these fuzzy slippers on her feet. Her hair was sticking up at odd angles, and her face was red with anger. She marched right across the street, not even looking for cars, though to be fair there weren't any at that hour. "Excuse me," she shouted over the sound of my engine. "Excuse me, Wesley." I put the truck in park and rolled down my window. "Morning, Patricia. Something wrong, something wrong, something wrong." Her voice was getting shrill. "It's not even 6 in the morning and you're out here making all this racket. Do you have any idea how loud that thing is?" I glanced at my dashboard clock. It's 5:45. I've got to clear the driveway before the day starts. We got 8 inches overnight. I don't care if we got 8 feet. There are noise ordinances in this community. You can't be running equipment like that at this hour. I kept my voice calm. Patricia, the town ordinance says no loud noise before 7 on weekdays, but snow removal is specifically exempted. You can check the Burlington Municipal Code if you want. Her face got even redder. Well, the HOA has its own rules, and I'm telling you right now that this is unacceptable. You woke me up. I have to be at work by 8:30, and I was planning to sleep until 6:30. I'm sorry you got woken up, but I've got to clear the driveway. I'm almost done anyway. This isn't over, she snapped. I'm bringing this up at the next board meeting, and you can expect a formal complaint in your mailbox by the end of the week. She turned and stomped back to her house, her slippers getting soaked in the snow. I watched her go, shook my head, and finished clearing Mr. Chen's driveway. The whole interaction had taken maybe 3 minutes, but I had a sinking feeling it was going to turn into something bigger. Sure enough, on Thursday afternoon, I found a formal letter from the HOA in my mailbox. It was printed on their official letterhead, signed by Patricia and 2 other board members, and it was full of that specific kind of bureaucratic language that sounds important but doesn't really say much. The key points were that I was in violation of community standards regarding noise pollution, that I was creating a disturbance during quiet hours, and that I needed to cease and desist with my early morning plowing or face fines. The letter also helpfully informed me that HOA quiet hours were from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m., which was news to me because I'd read through the entire covenant when I bought the house, and there was no such provision. I pulled out my copy of the community rules and regulations and went through it page by page. Nothing. Not a single mention of quiet hours. I called my buddy Derek, who's a real estate attorney in Montpelier. We'd gone to college together, and he'd helped me with the closing on my house. I read him the letter over the phone. "That's interesting," he said, and I could hear him typing in the background. "You got your CC and Articus handy, the original covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Looking at them right now, no mention of quiet hours. Then they can't enforce it. HOA can't just make up new rules without going through the proper process. They need to notify all homeowners, usually need a vote depending on what your bylaws say. When was your last HOA meeting? October, I think. I didn't go. I was visiting my parents in Ohio. They send out minutes." "Yeah, I got them. Hang on." I dug through my mail pile and found the envelope with the October meeting minutes. I skimmed through them. Nothing about noise ordinances or quiet hours. Then this is just Patricia on a power trip. You want my advice? Write them back. Cite the specific sections of your CC and Articus. Point out that there's no legitimate quiet hours rule, and mention that snow removal is exempted under municipal code anyway. Keep it polite but firm, and document everything. I took his advice. Spent that evening drafting a response letter, kept it professional, cited all my sources, and dropped it in the mail on Friday morning. I figured that would be the end of it. The forecast that weekend was calling for snow. Not just snow, but serious snow. The Weather Service was predicting a major winter storm system moving in from the Great Lakes, the kind that could dump a foot or more on us. By Friday afternoon, everyone in the neighborhood was prepping. I saw people heading to the grocery store, checking their generators, making sure their snow blowers were fueled up. Saturday morning, the snow started. It began around 6 a.m., light flurries at first, but by noon it was coming down hard. Big, fat flakes that piled up fast. I stayed inside, worked on some code for a client project, and watched the accumulation through my window. By Saturday evening, we had maybe 6 inches on the ground, and it was still coming down steady. Sunday morning, I woke up to a winter wonderland. The snow had continued all night, and there had to be at least 18 inches out there, maybe more. The plows hadn't been through yet, and my driveway was completely buried. So was everyone else's. I bundled up, grabbed my coffee, and headed out to my truck at around 6 a.m. The temperature was in the teens, cold enough that the snow was light and powdery, perfect for plowing. I fired up the engine, letting it warm up while I brushed the snow off the windshield and windows. I just lowered my plow and started my first pass when Patricia's front door flew open. She came charging out, this time at least dressed in actual clothes, jeans and a heavy coat, but still with that same angry expression. She had her phone out and was pointing it at me, clearly recording. "I'm documenting this," she shouted. "You're in direct violation of the HOA cease and desist order." I stopped the truck and rolled down my window. "Patricia, there is no legitimate cease and desist order. You can't enforce rules that don't exist in the CC and Articus. I'm the HOA president, and I'm telling you this is a violation. You're going to be fined." "Fine me then. I'm clearing my driveway." Her face was practically purple now. "This is harassment. You're doing this deliberately to disturb me." "I'm doing this because there's 18 inches of snow and I need to be able to get out of my driveway. Same as everyone else in the neighborhood." I could see other neighbors starting to emerge from their houses now, curious about the commotion. Tom Rodriguez from 2 houses down was standing on his porch with his coffee mug. The Hendersons next door to Patricia had their front door open a crack. "I'm calling the police," Patricia announced. "Go ahead," I said. "They'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Snow removal is exempt from noise ordinances." She actually did it. She stood right there in her front yard, in 18 inches of snow, and called the Burlington Police Department to report me for noise violations. I went back to plowing while she was on the phone, clearing my driveway in systematic passes. About 20 minutes later, while I was working on Mr. Chen's driveway, a Burlington PD cruiser rolled up. The street hadn't been plowed yet, so the officer had to drive slowly through the deep snow. He parked at the end of my driveway and I recognized him. Officer Mike Stevens, a guy I'd met at a neighborhood watch meeting a couple years back. I put my truck in park and climbed out. Patricia was already rushing over to him, talking rapidly, gesturing at me and my truck. Officer Stevens listened patiently, nodded a few times, and then walked over to me. "Hey, Wesley," he said. "Got a complaint about noise?" "Yeah, I figured. I'm just clearing snow, Mike." "I know. I told Mrs. Morrison that snow removal is specifically exempted under municipal code. But she insisted I come out and talk to you." He lowered his voice. "Between you and me, you're not doing anything wrong, but maybe try to keep it down if you can, just to keep the peace." "I'm not trying to be loud. This is just what a plow sounds like." "I get it. Look, I'm going to tell her that I talked to you, that everything's legal and above board, and hopefully that'll be the end of it." He paused. "She also mentioned something about HOA violations. She sent me a letter saying I can't plow during quiet hours, but those quiet hours don't exist in our community rules. My attorney already confirmed it." Officer Stevens shook his head slightly. "HOA stuff is civil, not criminal. Can't help you there. But as far as the noise goes, you're completely legal. Keep doing what you're doing." He walked back to Patricia and had a conversation with her that I couldn't quite hear, though I could see her getting more and more agitated. She kept pointing at her phone, probably showing him the video she'd taken. Officer Stevens remained calm and professional, and after a few minutes he got back in his cruiser and carefully drove away. Patricia stood in her driveway, fuming. I could see her staring at me, and I just gave her a polite wave and went back to work. I finished Mr. Chen's driveway, then cleared out the area in front of my mailbox. The town plow came through while I was working, pushing a massive wall of snow up at the end of everyone's driveway. I took care of mine, then helped Mr. Chen with his. I noticed Patricia hadn't even started on her driveway. She'd gone back inside her house. Her white Lexus was still sitting in the garage, and she had to have at least 2 feet of snow blocking her from getting out to the street. I figured she'd either hired someone to plow her out or she'd do it herself later. Monday morning rolled around, and I was up early again. Not because of snow this time, we'd gotten lucky, and the storm had moved out Sunday afternoon, but because I had an early meeting with a client on the West Coast. I was at my computer by 6:30, video call ready to go, when I happened to glance out my window. Patricia was standing in her driveway, or rather, at the edge of where her driveway met the garage. She was still blocked in completely. The snow had settled overnight, but it was still a good 18 inches deep. She was holding a regular snow shovel, the kind you buy at the hardware store for $30, and she was just staring at the wall of snow in front of her like she couldn't quite believe it was there. I watched for a minute, curious to see what she'd do. She took a few half-hearted scoops with the shovel, tossing snow to the side, but at the rate she was going, it would take her hours to clear enough space to get her car out. She pulled out her phone, made a call, talked for a minute, then went back inside. My client meeting went well, wrapped up around 8. When I looked outside again, Patricia's car was still trapped. I could see her through her front window, pacing back and forth, and at one point she came out to try shoveling again, but she gave up after maybe 10 minutes. Tuesday morning, same situation. Her car was still buried. I was starting to wonder what was going on. Had she not been able to get to work on Monday? It was Tuesday now, and the Lexus hadn't moved. That afternoon, I saw a snow removal truck finally pull up to Patricia's house. It was from one of those professional services, and 2 guys with commercial-grade equipment started clearing her driveway. They were loud, way louder than my plow, and they worked for about an hour to get her completely cleared out. I happened to be getting my mail when they finished, and I heard one of them talking to Patricia. "Sorry we couldn't get here sooner, madam. We've been completely slammed since the storm. Every crew's been running double shifts." Patricia looked like she was barely holding it together. "I've missed 2 days of work because of this. Yeah, a lot of people are in the same boat. We're doing our best." She paid them and they left. She immediately got into her Lexus and backed out, heading down the street toward the main road. I figured that was the end of her snow problems, and maybe this whole thing would blow over. Wednesday morning at 5:30, I was woken up by my phone buzzing. It was a text from Mr. Chen. "Wesley, I'm so sorry, but Patricia Morrison just knocked on my door demanding I tell her who gave you permission to plow my driveway. I told her you've been kind enough to help me for 2 years, but she seems very upset. Just wanted to give you a heads up." I groaned and rolled out of bed. It wasn't even 6 yet, but I knew I wasn't getting back to sleep. I made coffee and was sitting at my kitchen table when I saw Patricia's garage door open. She backed her Lexus out and drove off, probably heading to work. At least she could get out today. The HOA letter arrived that afternoon. This one was even more official looking than the first, complete with multiple pages of cited violations. According to Patricia and her board cronies, I was now in violation of noise pollution during quiet hours, $300 fine per incident, with 4 incidents documented, total of $1,200. Unauthorized snow removal on another property, Mr. Chen's, apparently requiring written permission from the HOA, $300 fine. Harassment of HOA board president, another $500 fine. Operating commercial equipment in a residential zone, even though my plow attachment was for personal use, $400 fine. They were trying to fine me $2,400 for clearing snow from my driveway and helping my elderly neighbor. I immediately called Derek again. "They're escalating," I told him, reading him the new letter. "Okay, this is actually good news," Derek said, which seemed insane to me. "How is this good news? They're trying to fine me thousands of dollars." "Because they're overreaching so badly that you've got a slam dunk case if this goes to court. You can't be fined for rules that don't exist. You definitely can't be fined for helping a neighbor with snow removal. And harassment. What did you do exist near her, pretty much. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to write them back. You're going to dispute every single fine with documentation. And you're going to inform them that if they continue this pattern of harassment, you'll be filing a complaint with the Vermont Attorney General's Office for HOA abuse. You might also want to mention that you're prepared to sue for damages if they keep this up. Will that actually work? In my experience, HOAs back down when they realize someone's willing to fight back. Most people just pay the fines because it's easier. But you've got right on your side here and the documentation to prove it. Stand your ground. I spent that evening drafting another response letter, even more detailed than the first. I cited specific Vermont state laws regarding HOA governance, included copies of the relevant sections of our CC and RTCS, attached a statement from Mr. Chen saying he'd requested my help with snow removal, and made it very clear that I would not be paying a single cent of their made-up fines. Thursday and Friday were quiet. No more letters, no more confrontations. I saw Patricia leaving for work both mornings, and she pointedly ignored me when I waved. The rest of the neighborhood seemed to be going about their business as usual. Saturday afternoon, I was out front washing my truck, because even in winter you've got to maintain your vehicle, when Tom Rodriguez wandered over from his house down the street. "Hey Wesley, got a minute?" he asked. "Sure, what's up?" Tom looked uncomfortable. "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but Patricia's been going around the neighborhood talking to people. She came by my place yesterday evening. What's she saying? She's trying to get people to sign some kind of petition. Says you're being disruptive and aggressive, claims you're violating all these HOA rules. She wanted me to sign something supporting the fines against you. Did you sign it? Hell no. I told her I've seen you out there helping Mr. Chen, and as far as I'm concerned, you're being a good neighbor. But she's talking to everyone. The Hendersons, the Crafts, the Johnsons. I don't know who else. I appreciate you telling me, Tom. For what it's worth, most people think this is crazy. We all plow our driveways. We all make noise. That's just winter in Vermont, but Patricia's on a mission." That night, I got an email from another neighbor, Susan Willis, who lived 3 houses down on the other side of the street. She'd gotten wind of Patricia's petition campaign and wanted to let me know that she'd be writing a letter to the HOA board supporting me. Turns out Susan was a retired paralegal, and she was offended by the HOA's overreach on principle. Sunday was calm. I worked on some projects around the house, did some meal prep for the week, and tried not to think about the HOA situation. But in the back of my mind, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Monday morning, the weather forecast was calling for another storm. This one was supposed to be even bigger than the last, potentially dropping over 2 feet of snow starting Monday night and continuing through Tuesday afternoon. Everyone in Vermont was paying attention. This was shaping up to be one of the biggest storms of the season. I made sure my truck was ready, checked my plow attachment, got everything prepped. If we were getting 2 feet of snow, I was going to need to plow multiple times to keep up with it. You can't effectively clear 2 feet all at once. It's too much weight for the plow. You've got to do it in stages. Monday evening, the snow started right on schedule. By the time I went to bed at 10, We already had 4 inches and it was coming down hard. I set my alarm for 4 a.m., figuring I'd do a first pass early to keep ahead of the accumulation. Tuesday at 4 in the morning, I bundled up and headed outside. It was still dark, and the streetlights were creating these perfect halos in the falling snow. We'd gotten about 10 inches overnight, and it was still snowing heavily. The forecast was saying another 12 to 14 inches before it ended Tuesday afternoon. I started up my truck and began plowing. The snow was deep enough that I had to take it slow, making careful passes to avoid overloading the plow. I did my driveway first, then moved over to Mr. Chen's. The whole neighborhood was dark and quiet, just me and the sound of my truck and the scrape of the plow. I was halfway through Mr. Chen's driveway when Patricia's porch light flipped on. Then her front door opened, and she came storming out in a bathrobe again, this time with boots on at least. "Are you kidding me?" she screamed across the street. "It's 4 in the morning, 4 in the morning, Wesley." I rolled down my window. "It's a major snowstorm, Patricia. I have to keep up with it or we'll all be buried." "I don't care. This is absolutely unacceptable." "I'm calling the police again." "Go ahead." She did. Stood right there in 10 inches of snow in her bathrobe and called the police to complain about me. Again. This time, a different officer showed up about 30 minutes later. Officer Jennifer Walsh, according to her nameplate. She looked tired, probably because the entire police department was dealing with weather-related calls. She talked to Patricia first, then came over to me. "Mr. Randolph, I understand you're clearing snow." "Yes, madam." "Got to stay ahead of this storm, or the accumulation will be too much to handle. Mrs. Morrison says you've been harassing her." "I've been clearing my driveway and my neighbor's driveway. That's it. She's the one who keeps calling the police on me." Officer Walsh looked at Patricia's house, then back at me. "You're legally allowed to clear snow from your property at any time. Emergency snow removal is exempted from all noise ordinances." That's what I told her. I'm going to go explain that to her again. "But sir, is there any way you could maybe wait until it's a bit later to start?" "I could, but then I'd be dealing with 18 or 20 inches of snow instead of 10. It's much harder to clear that much accumulation all at once." She nodded, understanding the practicality of it. "All right. Carry on. I'll talk to Mrs. Morrison." I watched Officer Walsh have what looked like a lengthy conversation with Patricia. Even from across the street, I could see Patricia getting more and more worked up, gesturing wildly, pointing at me and her phone. Officer Walsh remained professional, but eventually she just got back in her cruiser and drove away, leaving Patricia fuming in her front yard. I finished clearing both driveways and went back inside. It was about 5:30 in the morning, and I was wide awake now despite the early hour. I made breakfast, watched the news, checked the weather updates. The storm was tracking exactly as predicted, maybe even a bit stronger. We were going to get hammered. By 9 a.m., we had another 6 inches on top of what I'd already cleared. I went out and did a second round of plowing, clearing fresh accumulation from both driveways. Patricia's driveway was completely buried again. Her car was in the garage, but even if she wanted to leave, she'd have at least 16 inches of snow blocking her path, and it was still coming down. I saw her watching me from her front window as I worked. When I finished and parked my truck, she came outside again. "You're doing this on purpose," she shouted at me. "You're deliberately plowing at all hours just to disturb me. Patricia, I'm clearing snow during a major storm. Look around. Everyone with a plow is doing the same thing. No one else is starting at 4 in the morning. Actually, Tom Rodriguez was out at 5. I saw his lights." That was true. Tom had a plow attachment too, and I'd seen him clearing his driveway while I was working on Mr. Chen's. "This is harassment, and I'm going to make sure you pay for it," she stormed back inside. I went back into my house, dried off, and got back to work on my computer. I had projects to finish, and thankfully I could work from home through this storm. The snow continued throughout the day. By 2 p.m., I had to go out and plow again. We were up to about 20 inches total, and the snow was finally starting to taper off. The forecast said it would end by 4 or 5 p.m. I did another full clearing of both driveways. Patricia's driveway now had probably 2 feet of snow piled up in it. Her car hadn't moved, and I wondered if she'd called in sick to work. With the storm this bad, a lot of places were closed anyway. The state was under a travel warning, encouraging people to stay home unless absolutely necessary. Wednesday morning, the storm was over. We'd gotten a total of 26 inches, one of the biggest single storm totals in recent years. The town plows had been working overnight, and the main roads were passable, though still messy. I was up at 6 a.m. to do another clearing, making sure everything was properly cleaned up. Patricia's driveway was a disaster. 2 feet of snow, packed down and already starting to ice over in places where the sun hadn't hit it. Her car was still in the garage, and she was still stuck. Around 8 a.m., I saw her come outside in her work clothes. She stood at the edge of her garage, staring at the wall of snow blocking her in, and I could see the exact moment she realized she wasn't going anywhere. She pulled out her phone, made a call, and from her body language it didn't go well. She was gesturing frantically, pacing back and forth in her garage. She tried calling a snow removal service. I know because I saw her on the phone for the next hour, calling multiple companies. Vermont had just been hit with over 2 feet of snow. Every single snow removal company in the state was booked solid for days. Wednesday passed, and Patricia's car didn't move. I saw her standing at her window multiple times throughout the day, just staring out at her buried driveway. She tried shoveling for about an hour in the afternoon, but 26 inches of settled snow is brutal to shovel by hand. She gave up after clearing maybe 6 feet of driveway. Thursday morning, still no movement from Patricia's house. Her driveway was still buried, her car still trapped. I was starting to feel almost bad for her. Almost. But every time I thought about feeling sympathetic, I remembered the bogus fines and the harassment accusations and the police calls. Around 10 a.m. Thursday, a different car pulled up in front of Patricia's house. A younger woman got out, maybe in her 20s, and went to Patricia's front door. They talked for a minute, then both of them came out to the driveway with shovels. Looked like Patricia had called in reinforcements. They worked for about 3 hours, the two of them, slowly clearing a narrow path from the garage to the street. It was backbreaking work. I could tell even from across the street. The younger woman, probably Patricia's daughter based on the resemblance, looked exhausted. Patricia herself was clearly struggling, taking frequent breaks. By early afternoon, they'd managed to clear just enough space for the Lexus to squeeze through. Patricia backed out very carefully, the car barely fitting through the narrow channel they'd carved. She drove off, presumably finally heading to work after missing Tuesday and Wednesday. That evening, I got another letter from the HOA. This one wasn't just from Patricia, it was signed by all 5 board members. They were doubling down on the fines, adding additional violations for continued harassment and willful disregard for community standards. The total was now up to $4,000. I called Derek immediately. "They've lost their minds," I told him. "Okay, it's time to go nuclear," Derek said. "I'm going to draft a formal cease and desist letter on my firm's letterhead. We're going to threaten a lawsuit for harassment, abuse of authority, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We're also going to file a formal complaint with the Vermont Attorney General's office. Will that actually do anything? The AG's office has a division that handles HOA complaints. They take this stuff seriously, especially when an HOA is clearly overstepping their authority. And the threat of a lawsuit should make the board think twice. Most HOAs have liability insurance, but the insurance companies hate dealing with lawsuits. The insurer will probably tell them to back off. Do it, I said. Derek worked fast. By Friday afternoon, I had a copy of his cease and desist letter, and it was impressive. 3 pages of dense legal language, citing multiple Vermont statutes, case law, and specific examples of the HOA's overreach. He'd also included a paragraph about potential criminal charges for harassment if they continued their campaign against me. He sent the letter via certified mail to the HOA, and he also sent copies to each individual board member at their home addresses. And true to his word, he filed a formal complaint with the Vermont Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, which handles HOA disputes. The weekend passed quietly. No new letters, no confrontations. I saw Patricia coming and going a few times, and she wouldn't even look in my direction anymore. Monday morning, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Randolph. This is Jennifer Santiago from the Vermont Attorney General's Office, Consumer Protection Division. I'm calling about your complaint regarding your homeowners association. Yes, hello. Thanks for calling. I've reviewed your complaint and the documentation you provided. I've also reviewed your community's CC and RTCS and bylaws. Mr. Randolph, I want you to know that based on what I'm seeing here, this HOA appears to be engaging in serious violations of Vermont HOA regulations. That's good to hear. I mean, not good that they're violating regulations, but good that I'm not crazy for thinking this was wrong. You're absolutely not crazy. The fines they're attempting to levy against you have no basis in your community's governing documents. The quiet hours they're citing don't exist. And frankly, their behavior toward you could constitute harassment under state law. So, what happens now? I'm going to be contacting the HOA board directly. I'll be informing them that they need to rescind all fines against you immediately, and that they need to cease and desist their harassment campaign. If they don't comply, we can pursue penalties against the HOA and potentially against individual board members. Thank you. That's really good to know. One more thing, Mr. Randolph. If they retaliate against you in any way for filing this complaint, I want you to call me immediately. We take retaliation very seriously. She gave me her direct line and email, and we ended the call. I felt like a weight had lifted off my shoulders. Tuesday afternoon, I was working at my computer when I happened to glance out the window. There was a car parked in front of Patricia's house that I didn't recognize. A few minutes later, I saw Patricia and another woman walking around outside, taking photos of Patricia's driveway and the surrounding area. The woman had a folder and was taking notes. Wednesday morning, I got a knock on my door. It was Officer Stevens from the Burlington PD. Hey Wesley, got a minute? Sure, come on in. What's this about? Mrs. Morrison filed another complaint against you. This time she's claiming property damage. Property damage? What property damage? She says your plowing damaged her driveway, caused cracks in the asphalt. She's claiming you were reckless and caused damage to her property. Mike, I've never plowed her driveway. I've only plowed my driveway and Mr. Chen's driveway across the street from her. I know. I told her that, but she's insistent. She even hired someone to do an assessment. He pulled out his phone and showed me photos. They were pictures of Patricia's driveway, showing some cracks in the asphalt. She says this damage happened during the recent storms. I looked at the photos carefully. Mike, those cracks are from winter freeze-thaw cycles. That's normal wear and tear on asphalt in Vermont. And again, I've never touched her driveway. I believe you, but she's filed an official complaint, so I have to document it. Do you have any video or photos showing that you didn't plow her property? Actually, I do. I pulled out my phone and went to my security camera app. I'd installed a camera system last year after there had been a package theft in the neighborhood. I pulled up footage from the various storm days, showing clear video of me plowing only my driveway and Mr. Chen's, never going near Patricia's property. Officer Stevens watched the footage and nodded. That's perfect. Can you send me copies of that? Absolutely. This should close the complaint pretty quickly. Between you and me, I think Mrs. Morrison is grasping at straws here. After Officer Stevens left, I sent the video footage to Derek as well. He said it was good to have documentation of everything, and he added it to our file. Thursday afternoon, I got an email from Jennifer Santiago at the Ag's office. She'd contacted the HOA board, and they'd been required to provide their governing documents and records of all board meetings and votes. The Ag's office had found multiple violations. First, the HOA had never properly voted on or implemented quiet hours. Patricia had essentially made them up and presented them as official rules without any board approval. Second, the fines they'd levied against me were not in accordance with the HOA's own fine schedule as laid out in the bylaws. They'd invented their own fine amounts. Third, and this was interesting, the Ag's office found that Patricia had been using HOA funds to hire the snow removal service for her own property without board approval or proper documentation. That last one was potentially criminal. Misuse of HOA funds could be prosecuted as theft or embezzlement, depending on the amounts involved. The Ag's office was ordering the HOA to immediately rescind all fines against me, issue me a formal written apology, cease and desist all harassment, provide a full accounting of HOA funds spent over the past year, schedule a special meeting with all homeowners to address the governance issues. If the board didn't comply within 30 days, the Ag's office would pursue enforcement actions and potential criminal charges. Friday morning, I found a letter in my mailbox from the HOA. It was brief and clearly written by an attorney, not by Patricia. It stated that all fines against me were rescinded, and it included a generic apology for any inconvenience. It was about as sincere as a form letter could be, which is to say not at all, but it was what the Ag's office had required. I also got individual emails from 3 of the 5 board members, the ones who weren't Patricia or her close friend Sandra Chen, no relation to Mr. Chen. These 3, Mike Torres, Linda Hoffman, and Robert Green, all said essentially the same thing. They hadn't realized the extent of what Patricia was doing. They'd signed letters without fully understanding them, and they were horrified to learn about the misuse of funds. The special HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. at the community clubhouse. All homeowners were required to attend or send a proxy. The agenda was simple: discussion of governance issues and election of new board members. Tuesday evening, I walked over to the clubhouse. It was the first week of February, cold but clear, and the streets were finally mostly clear of snow. The clubhouse was a small building at the entrance to our development, mostly used for HOA meetings and the occasional neighborhood party. When I arrived, the place was packed. There were maybe 60 or 70 people there, which was huge. Usually, HOA meetings attracted maybe 15 people if we were lucky. Everyone was there because word had spread about what had been going on. Patricia was sitting at the front table with the other board members. She looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The other board members looked similarly unhappy to be there. Jennifer Santiago from the AG's office was also present, sitting in the back with a laptop and a folder of documents. She'd told me earlier that week that she'd be attending to ensure the meeting was conducted properly. Mike Torres, the board vice president, called the meeting to order. His voice was shaky, and he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Thank you all for coming. As you know, the Attorney General's office has been conducting a review of our HOA's governance and finances. We're here tonight to address those findings and to hold elections for new board leadership. He went through the AG's findings in detail. The improper fines, the non-existent quiet hours, and then the big one, the misuse of HOA funds. Patricia had been using the HOA credit card to pay for various personal expenses, including the snow removal service, claiming they were community expenses. Over the past year, she'd charged more than $8,000 in personal expenses to the HOA. The room erupted. People were shouting questions, demanding to know how this could have happened, asking what would be done about it. Mike tried to restore order. The Attorney General's office is investigating the financial irregularities. The board has also referred the matter to local law enforcement. Patricia Morrison has resigned from the board effective immediately. Patricia stood up abruptly, her face bright red. This is a witch hunt. I have served this community for 3 years, and this is how you treat me. I made a few accounting errors, that's all. Mrs. Morrison, you charged $8,000 in personal expenses to the HOA, Jennifer Santiago said calmly from the back of the room. That's not an accounting error. That's theft. I was going to pay it back. Do you have documentation showing intent to reimburse the HOA? Patricia didn't answer. She grabbed her coat and purse and stormed out of the clubhouse, slamming the door behind her. A few people actually applauded. The rest of the meeting was surprisingly productive. The 3 remaining honest board members, Mike, Linda, and Robert, gave detailed reports on the actual financial state of the HOA. Aside from Patricia's theft, the association was in good shape. Dues were being paid, maintenance was up to date, and there was a healthy reserve fund. Elections were held for new board leadership. Susan Willis, the retired paralegal, was elected president. Tom Rodriguez was elected vice president. The 3 existing honest board members stayed on, and 2 new members were elected to fill the vacant seats. Susan's first act as president was to propose a motion to formally apologize to me for the harassment and to thank me for bringing the governance issues to light. The motion passed unanimously. After the meeting, dozens of neighbors came up to me to apologize for not speaking up sooner, to thank me for standing my ground, and to share their own stories about Patricia's HOA overreach. Turns out I wasn't the only one she'd been targeting. She'd fined the Hendersons for having their trash cans visible from the street, even though our rules allowed that. She tried to force the Rodriguez family to remove a basketball hoop from their driveway, claiming it was an unauthorized structure. She'd sent warning letters to multiple people for trivial violations, like slightly overgrown grass or holiday decorations being up a day too long. People had been paying her bogus fines just to avoid the hassle. Some people had paid hundreds of dollars over the years for violations that weren't legitimate. Susan Willis announced at the end of the meeting that anyone who'd been improperly fined could submit a complaint to the new board, and they'd review each case for possible reimbursement. The following week, Patricia's house went up for sale. A for sale sign appeared in her yard on Monday, and by Friday there was already a sale pending notice on it. She was getting out as fast as possible, probably before the criminal charges caught up with her. Derek called me on Wednesday of that week. Got some news for you. The Burlington prosecutor's office just contacted me. They're moving forward with charges against Patricia Morrison. What kind of charges? Theft by embezzlement, specifically misappropriation of HOA funds. It's a felony in Vermont if the amount is over $1,000. She took more than $8,000, so they're taking it seriously. What's she looking at? If convicted, could be anywhere from probation to 5 years in prison, depending on how the judge feels about it. She'll also have to make full restitution to the HOA. Plus, there will probably be civil penalties, and if she's got any professional licenses or certifications, this could affect those too. I don't want her to go to prison. I just wanted her to stop harassing me. I get that, and you're a better person than me. But the state takes theft seriously, especially when it's someone in a position of authority. She abused that authority for personal gain. Patricia's court date was set for early March. In the meantime, life in Maple Ridge Estates went back to normal. The new HOA board was functioning smoothly, and Susan Willis was doing an excellent job as president. She'd instituted new transparency measures, including monthly financial reports posted to a community website and regular town hall-style meetings where homeowners could ask questions and raise concerns. We got another significant snowstorm in mid-February, about 14 inches overnight. I was up early plowing my driveway and Mr. Chen's, same as always. This time, nobody complained. In fact, when I finished, Tom Rodriguez came over and asked if I'd be willing to help him clear his driveway too. His plow had broken down and he couldn't get parts until later in the week. I was happy to help. Patricia's house sold in late February. I saw the moving truck pull up on a Saturday morning. She supervised the movers from her front door, never once venturing out into the yard. She didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't acknowledge any of her former neighbors. She just got in her Lexus when the truck was loaded and drove away. A young couple with a baby bought the house. They moved in 2 weeks later, and they were friendly, normal people. The husband, Jason, came over to introduce himself the day after they moved in. He'd heard about the HOA drama. Neighborhood gossip travels fast, and he wanted to assure me he wasn't planning on causing any problems. We ended up talking for an hour about snow removal equipment, and he mentioned he was thinking about getting a plow attachment for his truck too. Patricia's court date came in early March. I didn't attend, but Derek went as my representative since I'd been the initial complainant that started the investigation. He called me afterward with the outcome. She pled guilty to 1 count of felony theft, he said. Probably on advice from her attorney to avoid a trial. The judge sentenced her to 2 years, suspended with 3 years of probation. She also has to pay back the $8,000 to the HOA, plus court costs and fees. And she can't serve on any HOA or condo board in Vermont for 10 years. No prison time then, not unless she violates probation. The judge took into account that she has no prior record and that she made some bad decisions but isn't necessarily a danger to society. Still, it's a felony conviction. That's going to follow her around. Good, I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted revenge, but because there had to be consequences. Patricia had abused her authority, harassed me and other neighbors, stolen thousands of dollars, and weaponized the HOA rules to make people's lives miserable. The fact that she'd face real consequences, even if not prison, felt like justice. Spring came to Vermont gradually, the way it always does. The snow melted, revealing lawns that needed work and driveways that had taken a beating from the winter weather. I spent a weekend in April repairing some cracks in my driveway. Good honest work with my hands. Mr. Chen came over while I was working, bringing me a cold drink. "Wesley, I never properly thanked you for everything this winter. Not just the plowing, though that was wonderful, but for standing up to Patricia. She'd been making my life difficult too. Last year she tried to fine me because my mailbox post was not regulation colors. You're kidding. I wish I was. I ended up repainting it just to avoid the hassle. But you stood your ground, and because of that, everyone's better off now. I just did what was right. That's more than a lot of people do these days. The new HOA board held their spring neighborhood cleanup day in May, and nearly everyone showed up. It used to be that maybe 10 families would participate. This year, it was more like 40. People were invested in their community again. Now that the atmosphere of fear and petty enforcement was gone, Susan Willis pulled me aside during the cleanup. I wanted you to know, we've processed all the complaints about improper fines. We've identified about $15,000 in bogus fines that Patricia collected over the years. We're issuing refunds to everyone affected. That's amazing. How'd you manage that? We went through every single fine recorded in the HOA books, compared them against our actual CC and RTCS, and determined which ones were legitimate and which ones were Patricia making up rules. Turns out about 60% of her fines had no basis in our governing documents. It was a lot of work, but it needed to be done. The neighborhood's lucky to have you as president. We're all lucky that you were willing to fight back instead of just paying up and staying quiet. Summer in Vermont is beautiful, and that year was no exception. I spent my weekends hiking, working on my house, and being a regular part of the neighborhood community. The difference was palpable. People were friendlier, more relaxed. The neighborhood felt like an actual community instead of a police state run by an HOA tyrant. In July, the new HOA board organized a neighborhood barbecue. It was the first one in years. The last time Patricia had organized a community event, she'd required RSVPs 2 weeks in advance, banned children from certain areas, and created a 17-point list of rules for attendees. This time, Susan just sent out an email saying, "Show up if you want, bring whatever you want to share, and let's hang out." Nearly the entire neighborhood came. Kids were running around playing, adults were chatting and laughing, and there was way too much food, but that was okay because everyone took leftovers home. Jason and his wife Melissa, the couple who'd bought Patricia's old house, fit right in. Their baby daughter was the center of attention, and Melissa told me she was so glad they'd moved to such a welcoming neighborhood. "We almost didn't buy the house," she admitted. "When we heard about the HOA issues during the inspection period, we were seriously considering backing out. But our realtor told us the problems had been resolved and there was new leadership, so we decided to take a chance. I'm so glad we did." "Well, we're glad to have you," I said. As summer turned to fall, I started preparing for the next winter. I got my truck serviced early, made sure the plow attachment was in good condition, stocked up on ice melt and shovels. Vermont winters don't mess around, and I wanted to be ready. In October, the HOA held their annual budget meeting. Under Patricia, these meetings had been rubber stamp affairs where she presented her budget and everyone just approved it without discussion. Under Susan's leadership, it was different. She presented a detailed budget with line item breakdowns, took questions, incorporated suggestions, and the final budget that was approved was actually created by the community, not dictated from above. One of the budget items was an emergency snow removal fund. The idea was that, for elderly homeowners or people with disabilities who couldn't clear their own driveways, the HOA would contract with a snow removal service to help them out during major storms. It passed with strong support. "This is exactly the kind of thing an HOA should be doing," Tom Rodriguez said during the discussion. Helping neighbors, building community, not harassing people over nothing. November brought the first snow of the season. Just a dusting, a couple of inches, but it was a reminder that winter was coming. I cleared my driveway and Mr. Chen's without incident. No complaints, no police calls, no threatening letters. Just neighbors helping neighbors the way it should be. I never heard from Patricia again. I don't know where she moved to, what happened with her job, or how she's doing. Part of me hopes she learned something from the experience, that she reflected on her behavior and became a better person. But honestly, I don't spend much time thinking about her. What I do think about is how important it is to stand up for yourself, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. Patricia Morrison tried to use her position of authority to bully me into submission, and when that didn't work, she escalated until she crossed legal lines. If I had just paid those first bogus fines, if I'd given in and stopped plowing early in the morning, she would have continued her pattern of abuse. Not just with me, but with everyone in the neighborhood. By standing my ground, by documenting everything, by getting proper legal advice and involving the appropriate authorities, I didn't just solve my own problem. I solved a problem for the entire community, and that feels good. It's December now, almost a year since this all started. We're expecting another significant storm this week, maybe 18 inches. I've got my truck ready, my plow is in perfect condition, and I'm prepared to clear driveways for myself, Mr. Chen, and anyone else who needs help. The weather forecast is calling for the snow to start late Monday night, which means I'll probably be up early Tuesday morning, maybe around 5 a.m., to start plowing. And this time, when I fire up my truck and start clearing snow, I'll do it with the knowledge that I'm not violating any rules, real or imagined. I'm just being a good neighbor, which is what HOAs should encourage, not punish. Sometimes I'll glance across the street at the house where Patricia used to live, and I'll see Jason and Melissa's lights on, their family going about their normal life. That house, which used to represent stress and conflict, is now just another house in the neighborhood. And that, more than anything else, feels like victory. The snow is starting to fall now, big fat flakes that are sticking to the ground. By morning, we'll have several inches, and I'll be out there with my plow, clearing paths, helping neighbors, and doing my part to keep our community functioning during a Vermont winter. And somewhere, I hope Patricia Morrison is thinking about the consequences of her actions, about how a vendetta over plow noise at 5 in the morning led to a felony conviction and the loss of everything she'd built in this community. But that's her story. Mine is about standing up for what's right, about the importance of community, and about the satisfaction that comes from helping others. And as I watch the snow continue to fall, I feel nothing but peace and contentment with how everything turned out. The neighborhood of Maple Ridge Estates is stronger now than it was a year ago. We have honest, transparent leadership. We have homeowners who are engaged and involved. We have actual community instead of fear-based compliance. And we have the knowledge that when someone abuses their authority, when they try to use their position to harass and intimidate, there are consequences. Winter in Vermont is harsh, but we face it together now, and that makes all the difference.